Welcome back to the deep dive. You know how we do things here, we roll up our sleeves and get into the really good stuff.
That's right. Always a deep dive.
And today's deep dive is into Practical Work on Self by E.J. Gold.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, Gold, he doesn't mess around. He throws out some seriously unconventional ideas.
Yeah.
Like this whole thing about awakening the machine, it's kind of mind-bending.
It is, it is.
Have you ever just felt like you're going through the motions, like living life on autopilot?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like a robot, just going and going.
That's exactly what Gold dives right into. His core concept is that we humans, we're basically just sleeping machines.
We are operating without real awareness.
That's a pretty heavy concept.
It is. But it's true when you really think about it.
So what exactly does he mean by this whole machine thing?
Okay, imagine like a really complex machine, right? It's humming along, doing its thing,
Yeah.
but there's no one like really at the controls. Gold's argument is that most of us are functioning like that, reacting out of habit instead of really, truly consciously acting.
So it's like we're asleep at the wheel of our own lives.
Exactly. Like we're not really fully present, you know?
Okay, that makes sense. So if we're all these sleeping machines, how do we wake up?
Well, Gold, he gives us this experiment to highlight the machine's nature, like how automatic it is.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the experiment?
It sounds simple, but give it a try. Focus all your attention on the second hand of a clock.
Okay, like just watch the second hand.
Yeah. But at the same time, be super aware of all your sensations, your thoughts, and all your emotions, like simultaneously.
Oh, wow. All at the same time.
Yeah, it's harder than it sounds.
I bet it is. I can see how that would give you a glimpse into how much we do on autopilot without thinking.
Right. And that's the first step, like recognizing those automatic patterns. They're really ingrained.
So we're like programmed. But how do we reprogram ourselves?
Well, to understand this better, Gold has this unique way of looking at the brain. He says we have 3 brains: the head brain, the midbrain, and the tail brain.
3 brains. Okay, this is getting a little complicated.
It's just a different way of thinking about it. But basically, these 3 brains, they work independently most of the time, but then there's this thing called transference.
Transference, what is that?
So the head brain is all about thinking. The tail brain, that's where our emotions are. And the midbrain, well, it connects the two.
Okay, I'm following so far.
Transference is when the thinking part shifts from the head brain to the tail brain.
So our thoughts and emotions kind of merge.
Exactly. They become more integrated. And that's where things get really interesting because Gold thinks that this transference can sometimes happen by accident.
By accident.
Yeah, which might be why some people are misdiagnosed as mentally unstable.
Whoa. So they've kind of stumbled into a higher state of awareness.
That's what he suggests.
Wow, that's a mind bender. Makes you wonder about how much we really know about, the mind. But if we can shift into this higher awareness accidentally, is there a way to do it on purpose?
That's the million-dollar question.
I bet it is.
Gold, he doesn't give us like step-by-step instructions, but he's really big on self-observation.
Like really paying attention to what's going on inside our heads.
Yeah, and how it affects how we act.
Makes sense. The more we understand those automatic patterns, the more we can start to change them.
Exactly. And that brings us to the concept of negative manifestation.
Okay, negative manifestation. What is that all about?
It's basically all those automatic reactions we have to the world around us. Like our default setting is to get riled up by even the smallest things.
So it's those knee-jerk reactions that we often regret later, like blowing up at the barista when they get your order wrong.
Yeah. Or road rage. Gold uses this really cool analogy to explain it. Imagine dropping a pebble into a perfectly calm pond.
Okay, got it. Still water, a pebble drops in.
Now picture the ripples that spread out from where it landed. Those are like our emotional reactions. Something happens, like a rude comment, a traffic jam, and boom, those ripples of negativity, they just go out.
And they disrupt our peace.
They do.
So even the small things can create these big ripples of negativity.
And Gold's point is that these ripples are a huge source of suffering. We're always agitated, never really at peace.
Makes you think about how much energy we waste on getting upset about things we can't control.
Totally.
So how do we stop those ripples from happening in the first place?
It's not about stopping them completely. It's about becoming aware of them, noticing them as they're happening.
Without getting swept up in the current.
Yeah, like learning to ride the waves instead of getting knocked over.
I like that.
So you can choose how to respond.
Okay, but how do we actually create that space between the trigger and our reaction?
It's about bringing a more mindful attention to everything, even the little things. And this leads us to another one of Gold's big ideas, the chief weakness.
Chief weakness, okay? What's that?
It's that one flaw we all have, the one we're actually convinced is our biggest strength.
So we're blind to it.
Totally. We cling to it, think it's what makes us special, but in reality, it's what's holding us back.
Like the person who thinks they're brutally honest, when really they're just being mean.
Exactly. They think it's honesty, but it's actually their chief weakness.
Yeah, and it's causing all those ripples. So not only do external things set off our negativity, we're actually creating a lot of our own suffering by holding on to this chief weakness.
That's right.
But how do we even start to figure out what our chief weakness is?
Well, Gold has some tools for that. He talks about looking at our habits, especially those annoying ones, even the tiny ones. He has this phrase, booby du jour.
Booby du jour. Okay, what's that?
Think of it as that trivial thing that grabs our attention and sucks us in, you know? It distracts us from what we should be focusing on. It could be anything, like worrying about what people think or obsessing over something small.
So, like replaying that awkward conversation in my head over and over again.
Exactly. Or getting totally thrown off by something someone said online.
So it becomes our booby du jour, like our trap for the day.
Yes. And Gold suggests that instead of just trying to ignore these distractions, we should use them as a chance to reflect, to learn about ourselves.
So those annoying habits can actually point us towards our chief weakness.
Exactly. They're like little clues.
Yeah.
They are. Like signposts showing us where we need to do some inner work.
Okay, so by paying attention to those little distractions, we can start to see the bigger picture. But how do we actually start to, like, address our chief weakness? Once we know what it is, how do we change it?
That's the hard part, right? Because we're basically trying to wake up this sleeping machine.
And it doesn't want to wake up.
No, it does not. It wants to stay asleep, keep doing things the way it's always done them.
So how do we fight against that?
Well, Gold has this really interesting idea. He calls it harmless whims.
Harmless whims. Okay, I like the sound of that already.
It's basically about intentionally doing something, even a small thing, that kind of breaks you out of your routine.
So, like, instead of grabbing my usual coffee on the way to work, I decide to take a walk in the park.
That's it. It's like a little act of rebellion against the machine's programming.
Like we're showing it who's boss.
Yeah, and Gold says that by giving in to these whims, even the little ones, we start to build up our willpower, you know?
So we can resist the machine's pull.
Yeah, we're building up the strength to overcome it. And it doesn't have to be big changes all at once. He has this concept of the one small habit.
One small habit. Okay, what's that?
Pick one tiny habit, something you do every day, and intentionally change it.
Like, instead of scrolling on my phone before bed, I read a book.
Exactly. It's a small shift, but Gold thinks it can have a huge impact, like a ripple effect.
So one small change can lead to bigger changes.
That's the idea. He describes it as like igniting an alchemical fire.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful image.
Uh-huh.
But how long does it take to see a real change from just one small habit?
Well, it's not a quick fix. But the key is to be consistent. Do it every day. Be intentional about it.
So it's not just what we do, but how we do it.
Exactly. The awareness we bring to it.
That makes sense. But with all the stuff going on in our lives, all the negative manifestations and our chief weakness pulling us back, how do we stay focused on making those small changes? It seems like we'd be fighting against ourselves constantly.
This is tough, for sure. That's why self-observation is so important. Gold has this whole chapter called The Observation of the Biological Machine. He gives us all these exercises to help us study our habits and reactions.
So we become like scientists of our own behavior.
That's it. We get curious about the patterns instead of judging ourselves for them.
And that curiosity, that helps us detach.
Yeah, it's about creating some distance so we can see things more clearly.
And that's where living in the present moment comes in.
Yes. Gold is really big on being present, on experiencing each moment fully.
I feel like that's something you hear a lot in self-help stuff. Be here now and all that.
Yeah, but Gold, he comes at it from a different angle. He says we're always stuck in the past, worrying about the future, missing out on the only time we have any control.
Which is right now.
Right now. And he wants us to really savor every hour like it's our last.
Wow, that would definitely change how you spend your time. But how does living in the present connect to actually changing ourselves?
Because right now is the only time you can actually choose how you're going to react.
So when we get lost in thoughts about the past or the future, the machine takes over.
Totally.
It's like the machine's driving and we're stuck in the back seat stressing about where we've been and where we're going.
That's a great way to put it.
But when we're present, when we're in the driver's seat, we can choose a different path.
Exactly.
This is all so fascinating, but Gold doesn't stop there, right? He also talks about our place in the universe, like the bigger picture.
He does. He does. One of the most mind-blowing chapters is called Centrum of Cosmos.
Okay, Centrum of Cosmos. That sounds pretty grand.
It is. He talks about how we're all just a small part of this vast, interconnected universe. He uses the analogy of octaves, like in music.
Okay, so different levels of existence, like building on each other.
Yes. Each level has its own laws.
Like those Russian nesting dolls. You open one and there's another one inside and another and another.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're all connected, all part of this bigger whole.
And Gold suggests that if we understand these cosmic laws, we can better understand our own place in it all.
So it's not just about self-improvement, but about seeing ourselves as part of something much bigger.
Right.
But how does that fit into the practical work of awakening the machine?
Well, it's about shifting our perspective, not just focusing on ourselves, but seeing that we're part of something amazing.
Like we're part of a grand symphony, not just a solo act.
Yeah, and that can be really freeing, you know? Helps us let go of the small stuff, connect with a sense of purpose.
Wow, that's powerful. But how do we actually cultivate that sense of connection?
Gold talks about spending time in nature, looking at the stars, thinking about the cycles of life and death. He even suggests doing things like consciously directing your energy towards others.
Like sending out good vibes.
Yeah, cultivating compassion, recognizing that we're all interconnected.
It's about bringing that sense of awe and wonder that we feel in nature into our everyday lives.
And realizing that even amidst all the chaos, there's still so much beauty and magic around us.
Okay, so we've talked about awakening the machine, negative manifestations, our chief weakness, those harmless whims, the importance of living in the moment, and even our place in the cosmos. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But does Gold offer any advice on how we can actually put all this into practice in our daily lives?
He does. He gives us this tool, the centrum of gravity question.
Okay, the centrum of gravity question. I like how that sounds. What is it?
It's not just a question you think about. It's more like an active force. It guides your inner work.
So it's not something you just chat about over dinner. It's more like something that really shakes you up.
Yeah, it should cause some discomfort, make you question things.
It's like that saying, comfort zones are where dreams go to die.
Exactly. Gold says this discomfort, it's actually good for us. It keeps us awake.
So how do we find our centrum of gravity question? Does Gold give it to us, or do we have to come up with it ourselves?
Well, Gold, he doesn't have like a specific question for everyone. He says you have to find the question that really resonates with you.
The one that keeps you up at night.
Yes, the one you keep coming back to.
But how do we know when we found the right question?
It should be something you carry with you all the time. Something you think about in quiet moments.
And it should inform how you interact with the world.
Yes.
So it's not just a mental exercise. It's a way of life.
It is.
But is there a danger of getting too fixated on our question, Could it become like another booby du jour?
That's a good point. It's important to find balance. The question is a tool. It's not meant to be a dogma.
So we don't cling to it rigidly. We use it as a guide, but we don't let it rule our lives.
That's right.
But once we have our question, what do we do with it?
Gold says we can journal about it, contemplate it, talk to other people about it.
So we explore it from all angles.
Yeah.
But what about Gold himself? What's his centrum of gravity question?
Well, he doesn't actually say what his question is, but he does talk about his own journey as an artist.
Yeah, and how creating art is like its own form of practical work.
And he even includes some of his drawings in the book.
Oh yeah, those were really cool.
They were. It makes you think about how art can be a way of exploring your inner world.
It's like that saying, art is not what you see, but what you make others see.
Exactly. And Gold's drawings, they invite us to look at ourselves and the world in a new way.
Speaking of seeing things in a new way, what about that concept of new day every day?
Ah, yes. That's a big one. Gold challenges us to approach each day like it's our first day on Earth.
So we wipe the slate clean, forget about all our past experiences.
It's not about forgetting. It's more about approaching everything with fresh eyes, a beginner's mind.
Like hitting the reset button on our perception.
That's a great way to put it.
So instead of seeing the world through all the baggage of our past, we see it anew.
Exactly.
Wow, that sounds incredibly liberating. But how do we actually do that?
Well, Gold suggests things like mindful breathing exercises, spending time in nature, even just taking a few minutes each morning to set an intention for the day.
So we're choosing to see the world with curiosity and wonder.
Exactly.
It's not about pretending our past doesn't exist. It's about choosing to see the possibility in each new day.
That's it.
But how does this whole new day, everyday thing connect back to awakening the machine?
Well, it helps us break free from those old patterns and limiting beliefs. Every day is a chance to start fresh, to create something new.
It's like we're rewriting the script of our lives.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about Gold's work. He's not giving us rules, he's inviting us on a journey.
A journey of self-discovery.
Yes.
But this journey, it can't be all sunshine and rainbows, right? There must be challenges along the way.
Of course, Gold talks about that. He says, we're going to face resistance from the machine. We're going to have setbacks. It's about being patient and persistent.
And finding people who can support us along the way.
Exactly. We're not alone in this.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the machine analogy, negative manifestations, our chief weakness, those harmless whims, the importance of living in the present moment, our place in the cosmos, the centrum of gravity question, the new day, everyday mindset, and the fact that this journey, well, it's going to have its ups and downs.
That's Gold in a nutshell.
Is there anything else you want to highlight? Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
I think it's important to remember that this journey, it's not about reaching a destination. It's an ongoing process. It's not about being perfect. It's about constantly striving to awaken to our true potential.
It's about embracing the journey with all its twists and turns and realizing that we're always evolving.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it so exciting. There's always something new to discover.
Always something new.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into E.J. Gold's practical work on self, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this?
That this work is for everyone. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to wake up.
That's a great way to put it. It's about choosing to live more consciously, more intentionally.
And it's possible.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. So to all our listeners out there, go check out Practical Work on Self by E.J. Gold and see what you discover. Until next time, keep diving.
You know, it really is mind-blowing to think we have this potential to wake up, to become more aware, even with all those automatic patterns running in the background. But I wanted to go back to something we talked about earlier. Remember Gold's idea of transference, where our thinking shifts from the head brain to the tail brain.
Yeah, where thinking and feeling become more integrated.
It's a radical concept, right? And you mentioned Gold thinks it can happen accidentally, and that's why some people might be misdiagnosed as, mentally unstable. I have to admit, that part kind of threw me. It's definitely one of the most challenging ideas in the book. He's suggesting that what we see as mental instability in some cases might actually be a glimpse into a higher state of awareness. Like these individuals are experiencing the world in a completely different way, but they don't have the tools to understand it,
So they're like accidental pioneers of consciousness.
In a way, yeah.
But isn't it kind of a slippery slope to say that some mental health challenges could be mistaken for some kind of awakening? How do we know the difference?
It's a valid concern, for sure. And it's super important to approach this idea carefully. Gold isn't saying we should dismiss or downplay mental health conditions. He's just asking us to consider the possibility that maybe we don't have the whole picture when it comes to consciousness and mental well-being.
So maybe what we consider abnormal in one context could actually be a different kind of normal, a different way of experiencing the world.
Exactly. And Gold's not saying people should diagnose themselves or avoid getting professional help. He's encouraging us to be open-minded, to question our assumptions, because there's still so much we don't know about the human mind.
Makes sense. So if transference can happen accidentally, can we also make it happen intentionally? Does Gold give us any clues on how to do that?
He doesn't give us a step-by-step guide to intentionally causing transference, but he does talk a lot about self-observation, like really paying attention to what the machine's doing without judging it or trying to change it.
So we just observe, we watch the machine's movements from a distance.
Yeah, without getting involved. And by doing that, we might actually create the right environment for a shift in consciousness to occur. It's like we're giving the machine space to rewire itself.
That's so interesting. So maybe the key to transformation isn't about forcing change, but about creating the conditions for change to happen naturally.
I think that's a great way to look at it.
It's interesting how this whole idea of self-observation connects to other spiritual traditions too. Like in meditation, they talk about observing your thoughts and emotions without getting carried away by them.
Right. It's about cultivating a mindful awareness without judgment.
So there's this common thread, this idea that to awaken, we need to become more aware of what's going on inside us without trying to control it.
And Gold, he gives us this really practical framework for understanding and applying that.
This has been an amazing deep dive. We've explored so many mind-blowing ideas, awakening the machine, transference, the importance of self-observation. As we wrap up, any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the key takeaway is that Gould's work is an invitation to go on a journey of self-discovery. It's not about reaching a specific destination, it's about the process of awakening to your true potential.
It's about trying out the things he talks about, seeing what works for you, and having the courage to keep exploring, even when things get tough.
Exactly. It's about remembering that we're not just these machines running on autopilot. We can wake up, we can choose a different way of being, and we can create a life that truly reflects who we are.
Beautifully said. It's about embracing the journey with all its challenges and triumphs and finding the joy in becoming more fully ourselves.
And on that note, I think we've come full circle.
We have. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to check out E.J. Gold Practical Work on Self. You never know what you might discover. Until next time, keep exploring.